Utah just completed one of the best seasons in program history. But blowout losses to Oregon and Texas overshadowed how great it really was. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, the best kept secret in all of college football. Today, bringing you our 2020 Utah Utes college football predictions. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, where you can follow us on our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also visit our brand new website, thegridironexpert.com, for some exclusive content that you will not find anywhere else. So guys, Utah, as we said, was one win away from making the college football playoff. If they beat Oregon in the Pac-12 title game, the Utes are facing off against LSU in the playoff and not Oklahoma. But Kyle Whittingham's squad was unable to get the job done. They were blown out by Oregon in that Pac-12 championship game, and they were blown out by Texas in the Alamo Bowl 38-10. And many will cite motivation, that they weren't motivated as a reason for that blowout loss. I cite Tom Herman is just fantastic in the postseason. But regardless, the Utes went 11-3, one of the better years that Kyle Whittingham has had in Salt Lake City. And he now enters his 16th year with the program, guys. And a lot of people are expecting Utah to take a step back. And while we do believe they will take a little bit of a step back, it's not going to be as big as many think. We take a look at their offense here, guys, and of course they lose a lot of playmakers, a lot of key starters on that side of the ball. They return 7 total, but they lose Tyler Huntley, their star quarterback, a dual threat quarterback I should add. They lose their star running back in Zack Moss, who had over 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns last year. So now they're dealing with a quarterback battle between Cameron Rising and the South Carolina transfer in Jake Bentley, who I thought was a fantastic pickup by this Utes squad. They need a quarterback, and they've got a very solid one in Bentley, who played, in my opinion, very well during his time with the Gamecocks. So I give Bentley the starting edge here going into this upcoming season. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but he does have a great tight end, maybe the best tight end in the Pac-12, and BRANT, who had over 600 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. So the offense, guys, might not take as big of a step back as many think. I think the major concern for Utah this year is their defense. A defense that only returns 2 starters from one that was second in the country last year. The Utes had the second-ranked defense in all of college football last year. They allowed less than 270 total yards per game and allowed a little over 80 rushing yards per game. Good enough for third in the entire country. But when you look at who they lose the career sack leader in Utah football history in Bradley Anae. They lose Julian Blackman and Jalen Johnson in the secondary. So this Utah defense, guys, is kind of depleted here. So I think they're going to really have to rely on Devin Lloyd, the linebacker, one very solid starter coming back, the leading tackler from last year, I should add. And then you've got some young talent there like Clark Phillips III, the highest ranked recruit in Utah football history, a guy that could make an immediate impact in the secondary. So you look at this Utah team, guys, they're going to take a step back. They probably are not going to win double-digit games again, probably not going to get a 10, 11-win season like we saw last year, but they are still Pac-12 South title contenders. And we take a look at their schedule, guys. Of course, we know that the Pac-12 has canceled all non-conference games. We've indicated that here with the X's. But like we've done for every Power 5 team so far, we're going to predict every single game for Utah. So these 3 wins in the non-conference against BYU, Montana State, and Wyoming will all be reflected at the end of this video and will be reflected in our Pac-12 recap. And of course, when the Pac-12 really finalizes their deal, when they finalize if they're going to play 9 games or 10 games, however they're going to do it for conference play, we will come out with updated records and updated standings. But right now, we've got the Utes starting off 3-0. They really kick off conference play here against California, a team they defeated 35-0 last year. They shut out the Golden Bears. But if you've been watching our Pac-12 predictions, you know that I love this California team. I love what Justin Wilcox is doing out in Berkeley. And this California team, guys, has the talent to maybe be the second best team in the Pac-12 North, only behind Oregon. The key for them is going to be keeping their quarterback healthy in Chase Garbers. When he is healthy, when he plays, he's 13-2 as a starter. Last year, he battled injuries, but when he played at least a half of football, he was 7-0. So California kind of revolves around Chase Garbers this year. This early in the season, we pray that he's not going down with an injury. And Justin Wilcox always has a very strong defense. I like the Golden Bears to get a win on their home turf this year, getting revenge over the Utes who shut them out in 2019. This could be one of those games where you see some early struggles within the Utes defense, especially if this game is the first for the Utes in that all-conference slate. They then take on USC on October 2nd, a Friday night game, guys, and we all know how those work. We know those weekday games, those Thursday night games, those Friday night games are very, very difficult, and they're major trap games for the elite teams, for the favorites. And when you look at this game, some may say that Utah's a favorite in this one. But I think it's USC that's the favorite here. USC beat Utah last year 30-23. It was their only regular season loss of the 2019 season. They beat them 30-23 out at the Coliseum. And I look at this game, guys, and I use a little bit of reasoning here. USC was solid last year. They weren't great, but they weren't bad. They finished 8-5, 7-2 in Pac-12 conference play. But if USC, with some new quarterbacks last year, keep in mind Slovis was not the starter on day one, if they could beat Utah in that elite of a defense last year, why can't USC beat Utah when their defense takes a step back and the Trojans are going to be even better than they were last year with 18 returning starters, 10 on the defense, Slovis, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tyler Vaughn's all back on offense as well. I like the Trojans to come into Salt Lake City and get a win over the Utes here. If they could do it last year with a worse team than I think they're going to have this year, and if Utah loses last year with a better team than they're going to have this year, then I think USC does come on the road and snag a win. It just makes sense. So they've dropped back-to-back games, guys, and that's not very characteristic under Kyle Whittingham. He does not lose back-to-back games very often, but he did do it at the conclusion of last year. They're 3-2 if you count the non-conference. We have them bouncing back with wins over Washington State, and we're going to give them a win over Washington as well. And we'll briefly run through those here. Washington State, they defeated by 25 points, 38-13 in 2019. And we know we look at Washington State this year. They're dealing with a brand new head coach, Nick ROLOVICH, coming in to Pullman now that Mike Leach has left for the SEC and Mississippi State. So I look at this, guys. How quickly does Washington State adapt to that run-and-shoot offense compared to the air raid offense? And does Washington State's defense drastically improve under ROLOVICH? It was never that good under Leach to begin with. Can he make drastic change and immediate changes in a very short amount of time? I don't think they can, and I think this is a game where you see Utah's defense, which always is strong under Whittingham, regardless of how many people are coming back. Utah's defense shuts down a Washington State offense that, with a new quarterback and some growing pains, will struggle. And I think the Utah offense puts up some points here from a big day behind Jake Bentley. So they take down the Cougars. We've got them taking down the Huskies here, guys. They beat Washington 33-28 last year. Utah, that was a huge game in terms of their playoff hopes. That was a huge game for Washington in terms of their North hopes. Keep in mind, the Huskies lost by 5 to Utah and only by 4 to Oregon, the two best teams in the Pac-12 last year. But you look at Washington, guys, like Washington State, they have a brand new head coach. Jimmy Lake getting promoted from defensive coordinator to the head coaching position after Chris Peterson resigned. And like Washington State, Washington returns 7 starters on the defensive side of the ball, but also is dealing with a brand new quarterback. This time it will be Jacob Sirmon. So I like this game is in Salt Lake City for Utah, and I do think that Washington's going to struggle offensively this year. I think when you lose your quarterback, when you lose your running back, when you lose 3 of your top 5 pass catchers, and then you get a brand new head coach who has very little time to work with you for this upcoming season, I think you're going to face some struggles and some adversity over the course of the season. So Utah beats the Huskies here, and after losing 2 straight games, they bounce back with 2 straight wins going into their bye week against UCLA. And I can mark this down, guys, as a quick and easy victory, in my opinion. Now, I know many will be quick to say, well, UCLA showed signs of improvement last year. They went 4-8, but all 4 of those wins came in conference play. And while I think that's fantastic for Chip Kelly, and while I really do want to see him succeed with the Bruins, I don't know if he can do it this year. I don't know if he can get them to a bowl game this year. Utah beat them 49-3 last year, and I don't know if UCLA is 46 points better in 2020. I really don't. I especially don't think that's going to be the case with Utah coming off a bye week. You've got a whole week to prepare for this game, going up against a UCLA team that outside of Dorian Thompson-Robinson doesn't have that much talent on offense, and their defense is one of the worst in the country. I think they breezed a victory over UCLA. I think they breezed a victory over Arizona, a team that I don't have high expectations for at all this season. And like Chip Kelly, Kevin Sumlin's a guy that I wanted to see succeed down in Tucson, a guy that I wanted to see thrive with the Wildcats. But Utah beat Arizona 35-7 last year on the road, and like UCLA, Arizona will have a decent offense. Grant Gunnell, top wide receivers, Kevin Sumlin, offensive mind, should be solid. But the defense will ultimately be their downfall. The game in Salt Lake City, Utah's not losing to the Wildcats, and they're not losing to Oregon State either. When you really look at this, guys, this first half of the schedule is rather difficult. Cal, USC, Washington, very tough games. After the bye week, their toughest game is Arizona State. We've got them beating Oregon State. They beat them 52-7 last year, and kind of like UCLA, I don't think Oregon State's 45 points better. I don't think Utah is 45 points worse. The game is at home for them. Oregon State is dealing with some quarterback questions themselves. Jake Luton is gone. Tristan Gebbia has to step in. And even though Utah lost so many pieces on the defensive side of the ball, especially from that rushing defense that only allowed a little over 80 rushing yards per game, I do believe that they're still going to be very stout up front, which means Jamar Jefferson for Oregon State will not be able to run all over them like he will be able to do against other Pac-12 opponents. So all those things tied up together, I don't think Utah loses this game at home, but I think they finally see their 5-game winning streak snapped at Arizona State. And when you look at their schedule, guys, if you really include these non-conference games, even if you don't, they only have 2 conference losses going into the final 2 weeks of the season. And a wide-open Pac-12 South with guys like USC and Arizona State really being the front runners along with Utah, they are in the thick of the division title race this late in the season, which means this game against Arizona State could really determine who gets in to the Pac-12 championship game. But I do believe they fall to Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils out in the desert. Yes, they beat Arizona State 21-3 last year, a top 20 matchup between the Utes and the Sun Devils, and very well could be a top 20 matchup yet again in 2020. But I look at Arizona State here, guys. Jaden Daniels is back, and he's got a whole nother year under his belt. Played all of 2019 as a true freshman and was one of the best quarterbacks within the Pac-12. He's back. He's got Frank Darby returning at wide receiver. They've got a lot of young talent surrounding him on offense, and I do think that defense takes a major step forward. They had a very strong rushing defense last year. Their passing defense is one of the worst in the country, around 115th nationally. I think they get that up to at least 100th in the country, and I think the Sun Devils win out in the desert, where, as we all know, it is a very difficult place to play. So they lose to Arizona State here, their 3rd loss of the season, but bounce back in a big way against Colorado. They defeated the Buffaloes by 30 last year, 45-15, and I think that score could be relatively similar in 2020. Colorado, guys, we said it over and over and over again, they are in for a rough season. Things did not go the way they expected them to. No one expected things to go the way they did this past offseason, with Mel Tucker bolting after 1 year for Michigan State in February. So all the top coaching candidates were gone by that point, which means that Colorado had to settle for KARL, who will not have a veteran quarterback as Steven Montez anymore, who will not have one of the best receivers in the conference, and Laviska Shenault anymore, and a defense that really wasn't all that great to begin with. So the Buffaloes will struggle mightily. Even though the game is in Boulder, Utah will go on the road and win this game, which means Kyle Whittingham in year 16 in Salt Lake City goes 9-3 in 2020. 9-3, including the non-conference games. If you want to take that out, that's fine. They're 6-3 in conference play, and they are absolutely going bowling. They play 9, they're a lock. If they play 10 and they lost that game, they're still 6-4. They're going to the postseason. And I think that's a very, very solid year for the Utes. While 3 conference losses might not be enough to get them to the Pac-12 championship again, it is good enough to go to a very, very solid bowl game yet again. And I think their luck could change in the postseason this upcoming year compared to how things went last year. So the Utes going 9-3, following up one of the most successful seasons in program history. I do believe that Kyle Whittingham will have them in contention yet again in 2020. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, where you can follow us on our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also check out our brand new website, thegridironexpert.com, for exclusive news, content, and offers that you will not find anywhere else. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.